What's up, fight fans? Welcome to this Pram podcast, Boxing and Bagels edition, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, big fight weekend means only one man that I turn to, my man, Kevin Iole from KevinIole.com, and the fastest growing YouTube channel, Kevin Iole on YouTube. Kevin, how are you this morning?
I don't know. Ronaldo started a YouTube channel not too long ago, and I think he's already up to what, 90 million. So
who's this?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah. So he had like I think in the first week, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it could be first month, but he had like 30 million followers. So he did pretty good.
All right, so you're the second fastest growing on YouTube. I would take that behind Ronaldo any day. I mean, you got to think about it. How huge is soccer and how big he is in the whole entire world? A couple billion to choose from.
It is. I've never seen. Well, I hate soccer, so I've never seen the guy play. One time, I don't know if he's any good or he stinks or what he does.
Oh, he's real good. He's actually real good. My kids think he's great too. They try to do his moves and stuff. Oh, boy. Yeah, no, real good. But anyway, big fight weekend last night. Let's start with Francis Ngannou, because I think if Hollywood doesn't come calling, that would be probably a misstep by them. To have him go through the tragedies that he's gone through, the ups and downs, personally and professionally, in the last, let's say, year to year and a half. You could even go back to 3 years when the knee injury had happened, stuff outside the ring, inside the ring, in the octagon, outside the octagon. To come back, to have all that pressure, and to perform the way he did yesterday against, I mean, probably one of his toughest opponents, but as far as size-wise, in Renan Pereira, what was your thoughts on that fight, and what can you take from this event from him?
You know, I mean, as an opponent, Renan Pereira is just a journeyman, right? I mean, he's not a very good opponent. Let's be honest here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I did the article with all the no contests that he has. You know, he lost. I mean, he lost to Fabricio Verdum, and he tapped, and the referee didn't see the tap, and they later changed it to a no contest. And there was all those, you know, those type of things. And he beat up really B-level competition. He had never beaten anybody that was, you know, was really elite, except for maybe Ryan Bader. And Ryan Bader was 40 years old, and, you know, so, you know, there was an answer for that. That being said, you know, I thought what Francis did was extraordinary, right? Because the two things, George, that I thought going into this fight, okay, talent-wise, I knew Francis Ngannou was up here compared to Ferreira down here. But he's coming off a knockout loss, a brutal knockout loss to Anthony Joshua. How does that affect you? Like, we didn't know. How is that going to affect him? And even worse, the second thing is, you know, his son Kobe died at the end of April. So 6 months ago, he lost his son, 15 months old. And you just, you know, as a parent, you know, you can't even imagine losing a child. And then he did it, and now is fighting 6 months later. That part, like, you just can't predict that, and that's the tough part. So anybody that thought Francis might lose didn't think he was going to lose because Renan Pereira was a better fighter. They thought he might lose because he certainly wasn't in the mental space to be competing at the highest level of MMA.
And I'll take that point and look at it this way. I have 2 children, and there is no playbook. If your kid passes away, you know, people have kids that are parents that their children have passed away. You know the effect it has on them, on our level, being just regular guys that just, you know, have a life that we live. We go to work, we get paid, we go home. These guys are under a spotlight, under scrutiny, and you could tell after the end of that fight, the emotion that just flooded out of Francis. You actually felt bad for him, to know, like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? You feel bad. When you saw that, what was your initial thoughts about that?
You know, I wanted to cry. I know this guy, and, you know, he's a good man, and he's a good guy, and, you know, he's you know, and think about it. You referenced us as average working people going to work and getting paid. And in one way, that's what Francis is. But in another way, he's got to stand in front of the entire world and talk about the most difficult thing in his life over and over and over. And before the fight, anybody who wanted to talk to him, that's what they wanted to talk to him about. After the fight, he's in the octagon. Brett Okamoto talks to him about that. Then he goes to the press conference. That the people who attended the press conference, that's what they wanted to talk to him about. Imagine the greatest tragedy of your life, and it's only 6 months old, and that you're talking about, ad nauseum. It's just amazing. And so, for him to conduct himself as classy and as great as he did, I just, I can't speak highly enough about Francis as a person.
Oh yeah, you got to tip your hat to him, going through that, even going through the training camp, everything that comes along with fighting on that level, and the fact that you're under the media spotlight. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing story. And I was genuinely happy for him. I never root against somebody, but I root for somebody. And I've never rooted so hard for somebody to come out at the end of this. Because even our conversation, I was a little nervous when I'd spoken to you. I said, do you think this could be bad? Because I think it would have been bad. If he got KO'd, I think that would have been bad. And you were pretty confident. You said, no, I think Francis can handle this. And he did effectively. No matter if the punches that we can get to that in a minute. But this was Francis would not be denied last night. He just wouldn't be denied.
Yeah, no, I mean, he wanted to win. He wanted to fight for his son and win for his son. And he went out there and he did that. And, the thing was, as I said, I think Ferreira is just a journeyman, really. He's not a guy that, you're going to look at and say, I think is going to go on to do big things in MMA. He's just a guy, right? He's just another guy out there. But he's big and he has power, right? And that, so the one thing that, you don't have, if you have the power, you can fight lousy the whole time and just land that one punch and bingo, things change. And so Francis had a lot to deal with going into that fight, right? Because, hey, if he didn't have that kind of power, it might have been easier on him. But Francis had to know that he couldn't afford to make a mistake. And I think that's part of the reason why he took him down, right? Because he said, hey, my chances of winning this fight, if I put him on his back, now I can, increase my chances of winning and decrease the risk of me getting caught with something.
Let's take a look at the technical part of this fight last night. You and I knew that he's not going to strike with him if he could. Although in the beginning they were trading leg kicks, pretty heavy leg kicks, by the way. But when Hennen went for that one punch, it was a perfectly timed double leg for Ngannou, and he got him on the ground. Yeah. I knew once he got him there, Well,
when you looked at that, George, I mean, it kind of showed the problems inherent with Hennen's game, big, long punch and slow.
Right.
And Francis was able to duck underneath it and get him on the ground. And that's the kind of problem that, when you're fighting at the absolute highest levels, those little things make a massive amount of difference, right? And that's one thing that I think, people sometimes don't give credit for, right? And Francis knew, what to look for, and he knew that opening came, how to attack. And, he has a great coach in Eric Nixick, and a secondary great coach in Dewey Cooper, that, and that team really had him prepared for every eventuality, I thought.
Yeah, and then he was even in the beginning, he was sharp, and he respected Hennen a little bit there. I think he gave enough respect, but then I think ultimately he knew he kind of just timed it so perfectly and he got him down. I thought, wow, this ain't gonna be a good fight. I thought maybe as he was trying to get the triangle, maybe he could get out, but it wasn't even effective. And then at the end, where it was the punch of the blows to the head, side first, two to the back of the head. But you and I know he wasn't getting up. This was a matter of maybe 30 seconds and it was over.
And you could see Francis putting everything he had into those shots, right? He was like, he was torquing his body up, and it was like I mentioned to you before we went on the air, he was kind of jumping up in the air and throwing those punches. And I mean, he put every single ounce of his energy into those shots. And man, you saw Hennen went out, and it's not often that you see guys go out from ground and pound. I mean, that is very rare. And he was out.
Yeah, out cold there. No need to check on that to see if he was out. He was gone, and he actually went limp about the second punch. No, the first punch he kind of went limp, and then the second punch got him, and then the referee jumped in, and that was the end of that. But this leads to a problem, I think, for PFL. And PFL now, I think they needed Francis to win, to make him a superstar. However, there's nobody on that landscape for who's Ngannou going to fight at this point. In PFL, they don't have many heavyweights here. To who are you going to get? I mean, you can't pull unless someone from UFC comes over that has contracts at the end, but that's always difficult to come over because I don't see anybody there on that landscape, and they're paying that big money to have Francis fight. This might be a problem for PFL to have him maybe go to boxing or kickboxing at some point to maybe have a joint promoters. I don't know where they can go with him.
He's not going to fight much longer no matter what, right? But I mean, when he signed with the PFL, that was what I said. I said the problem you're going to have going to PFL is that who do you fight? They have nobody in their heavyweight division that is really a match for him, right? And there's not a lot of guys in the world that are a match for him. But the UFC has heavyweights that could compete with him. I'm not saying beat him, but they, John Jones. I mean, who do you like, John Jones and Francis? We could sit here and argue that for a long time. Tom Aspinall, I think another one. You have to go, okay, Tom Aspinall, and you can go down a couple other guys and say, hey, there's a few other. But there's a short list of heavyweights that you're going to look at. Now, here's the problem. The PFL doesn't promote. I mean, the effort that they put into promoting this fight was abysmal, just absolutely abysmal. Right. And this is their biggest show, right? Everybody, they took their best fighters. They let everybody sit out for a long period of time and then threw them on this show. It's not like the UFC has a show every month and they have to, bring guys on and bring guys on. So This was the absolute best that the PFL could offer. And when they're doing that, they did a very poor job of promoting the fight. Now, when they have somebody else that's not nearly, they can't bill it quite the same way they're billing it now. I think they have problems, and that was why I said I thought Francis should have re-signed with the UFC. Now, having said that, Francis wanted to box, and he got his opportunity to box. And though he's 0-2, I think he made a mark in boxing by dropping Tyson Fury, and he made a lot of money. So who's to argue with the way it worked out for him, right? But I'm happy for Francis the way he performed, the way he carried himself. And, Francis is a big name in the history books of MMA, and he's going to remain that.
Any shot he returns to UFC?
No. He's under contract, and when he's done, he's done. He's not going to the UFC.
Okay, well, so really his legacy for himself is probably stamped at where he wants it to be. He's not looking for anything other than that.
And here's the thing. Like, I mean, the PFL, I understand they signed him, and so they're trying to build him up. But I don't know where this narrative came that he was the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in the world. That never was an argument or a discussion that he was in. And you can make the argument, and legitimately so, that he's the best heavyweight in the world. He was the UFC heavyweight champion. He did not lose it. John Jones hasn't beaten Francis Ngannou yet. So, Jones is the best fighter of all time, but we don't know yet that he's the best heavyweight of all time. But I'm not sure where the PFL came off this over the PFL their broadcasters really over the top. They act like guys, they have the greatest fighters of all time. From a boxing standpoint, it's like you're sitting there and you're thinking of Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Henry Armstrong, Harry Greb. The way they talk and they make these broadcasts come out in their promotional stuff. But I think Francis. Francis is going to be remembered as one of the great punchers in the history of MMA. He's going to be remembered as a classy guy who made a difference in the sport. And he's going to be remembered as one of the greatest UFC heavyweights who ever lived.
And you know what? He did make a mark outside the sport too. He really did. So that alone, I think, sheds a lot of light on the person that he is. And yesterday kind of basically put an exclamation point for me that Francis Ngannou is one of my favorite fighters that to ever come into the octagon and grace the sport.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he is a class act, but don't be expecting to see, now the PFL, Don Davis was, oh, Dana White's afraid to, fight. Well, think about it. Why should Dana White put any of his fighters up against any of your fighters? They are up here and you are down here. There's no comparison to them. And they built all the fighters, that are the biggest stars in the U.S., including Francis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, now, because you signed him, and you want to put him in, you say now Dana White's afraid. I mean, that's what Dana White has always done, tried to make the biggest fights, and he offered Francis a huge deal. I'm not, Francis decided to sign for his own reasons with the PFL for, what he thought was the right thing to do. But I mean, don't go acting like Dana's afraid. He tried to put John Jones and Francis together.
Right. Correct. Well, let's turn our attention to the boxing fight over the weekend. Tim Tszyu, Bakram Murtazaliev. I know, you know what? I announced it perfect all day yesterday as I was waiting for the fight, and I screwed it up here on as we're going on to Boxing and Bagels. Great, awesome. Anyway, believe it or not, I know you won't believe me, but before the fight started, I was like, I have a gut feeling that this guy who nobody really knows, undefeated Russian, Eastern European bloc kind of fighter, tough guy. He's tough. He could take a punch. He's in shape. He's going to keep coming forward. Tim Tszyu is a walk forward type of guy who doesn't go backwards. I had a gut feeling he was going to get KO'd. And I mean, wow, was that an one-sided ass whooping yesterday? Ooh. Boy, sheesh. Two questions I have. Number one, was this fight I put a little bit of onus on the management, just a little bit. I know you know them well, because one, I wouldn't have put him in with that because of high risk, low reward, millions of dollars on the table for someone like a Fundora or a Spence, even Spence, going after a belt. I get it, but you don't know much about this guy here. And two, coming back a little too soon. Did you or did you not? Was there a cut on that skull, on that scalp? Someone had said that. They reported that it was blood on the scalp from the same spot. I do not know if that was true.
Well, I did not see any blood come out of there, right? I mean, you saw in the first round they had that little clash of heads, and Tszyu put his glove up and looked, and it didn't appear to be any blood, right? And so I don't. So number one, Tszyu lost the fight to Fundora, so he was no longer the champion. So he couldn't fight Errol Spence or Fundora because their fight, they were going to fight each other, right? So that let's start, and that's number one. That he didn't have that option to sit there and say he wanted to fight one of those two again. He wanted to get a title back, and I don't blame him. And it was 7 months, almost 7 months, not quite 7 months. And I think, he looked at the Jack Culcay fight and said, can I handle this guy? And the fight against Fundora, maybe Fundora got screwed by all the blood because, yes, he wins the belt, but does he get credit? I think a lot of people are saying, well, Fundora won the fight because Tszyu couldn't see it. And that's kind of what I thought, right? But maybe now Fundora was better than we thought, right? And did something. But I didn't, George, get the sense that, that Tszyu was washed up or anything. I will say this. In the first round, and Amazon must have had microphones very, very close down there, because when they were punching each other in the first round, it was like a movie. You could hear that whap, whap, whap. Yeah. You don't normally hear that. And they were both landing very clean shots. And I was like, whoa, this is, pretty amazing. And Murtazaliev kept doing that into the second round and then into the third. And that's where Tszyu kind of went up. But I didn't think the past really played an impact on this fight, to be honest with you.
No, and I'm not saying just Spencer Fundora. I'm just saying someone a little bit different, only because, man, those fighters from that area are just, you're going to be in a tough, brutal bout, And the Fundora fight, take the blood aside, was a tough fight. It was just a tough 12-round brutal fight. I just felt that he was not, and especially because he comes forward. He just walks forward. Tim Tszyu said, I know no way to go other than forward, and I will die in the ring. I just thought that he's doing him a little bit of a disservice. And he is not washed up. I'm not saying he's washed up. I'm just saying take a little bit of a break. Go back into that water a little bit slower instead of jumping into the boiling, steaming water. That's the only, and I get it. He wants to get a championship fight. I get it. I get that. But you know, you have other fights down the road. I think that would worth more money than this guy here. Because did you see the arena? There was nobody there.
Yeah,
there was nobody.
Well, I think I sent this to you during the week, and if I didn't, there were tickets available, legitimate tickets available for $1, and you know, on Ticketmaster before the fight, and yeah, that was. Let me see if
I thought it was an actual like.
I have a screenshot. If I could find this screenshot while I'm on the air with you, I could text it to you.
Okay.
And I could have sworn that I sent it to you. Anyways,
no,
you
I
can
didn't
put
see
it
it
on the air. But these tickets were in fact $1, right? And so, I mean, I think part of that was, of course, the hurricane had just been there, and you know, that type of thing. And so, okay, there that is. Let me text this to you, George.
Okay.
And if you can get it on the air.
Yep. I'll pop it up.
There we go.
Yeah, it struck me as odd that there was nobody that was that there was nobody there. Unbelievable. Yeah, there it is. Oh my gosh. Row 1, row 1, section E. That isn't good. I'm going to try to get this now here. Put that here. And did you feel anything about that? Was it the card itself, though, being that is Tim Tszyu that big of a draw or no? Because, you know, here's a guy who came in with high hopes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Tszyu is popular because of his father. His father's a Hall of Famer. Excuse me. And was, you know, one of the best fighters of recent vintage. And then Tim was an exciting fighter. But his popularity is more in the South Pacific, you know, in Australia, where he's from, in New Zealand, and, you know, and maybe a little bit in Russia. You know, he has the Russian roots. But, you know, I mean, where were they going to put the fight, right? I mean, it was, you know, Tszyu wants to fight in the U.S. He's trying to build a name for himself on here, where the biggest media market, and it's a chance to get a world title. Because who else was he going to fight? Because if Fundora's got the belts, then Crawford has a belt. Murtazaliev had the last belt. So now, you know, like if he doesn't go for that one, then what's he going to do? And, you know, so I just thought that, you know, I mean, boxing is you know, like we were talking Ferreira, and I said Ferreira is a journeyman, but he had the power to knock Francis out. And, you know, that's a risk. Fighting is a risk because you never know. Like I always say, you don't find out who's better if somebody knocks a person out in 15, 20, 25 seconds, right? They landed something and it changed, and yes, they won the fight, but you don't know who's better. You know who's better when the fight goes on a little bit over time, right? So I think we got the sense last night that, hey, Murtazaliev is a better fighter than Tim Tszyu based on what we saw last night, because it wasn't just one punch, right? You know, going forward there's, and I kind of think they had to take the risk and fight that fight, try to get a world title, and then, you know, position himself for a Crawford or a rematch with Fundora, or potentially, you know, Spence or somebody like that.
I can't get the airdrop here to pop up on the screen. I did look for it there, but you're right. It's $1, section E, row 1. But did you see Costa Tszyu was there? And so
he was there. Yeah, they Jordan Plant, who is Caleb Plant's wife, interviewed him on the broadcast.
Okay. They said they were estranged. I did not know that they were estranged. This is the first time in a while they've met. They've seen each other.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, I'm not. I wasn't familiar. I know Tim has never been a big fan of being compared to Costa, right? You know, and talking about his dad, and you can understand. You know, Tim is trying to make his own way in boxing, and then you have this, you know, your father is fighting very similar weight class, you know, very close to where you were, and he's a legend. It's got to be tough on the son.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I don't know. Well, Kev, we're going to wrap up early today because we got a football game for Jackson. Jackson's got a football game, but I wanted to get you on to do that because of a couple things. Number one, you've got a big week. You've had a big week of UFC, and then coming up this week, a couple more big things going on. What's going on the channel?
Well, I've been reeling off some good interviews for UFC 208, so we're gonna, you know, continue doing that. I have Alexander Volkanovski will be joining me on Monday morning. Hamzat Chimaev will be joining me on Tuesday morning. And then we're going to do a live chat with Dana White. Now, I haven't put this out yet. It's going to be subscriber only, so you can ask Dana questions. I don't have a time yet because his schedule is kind of up in the air. So I talked to his person to get the time, to get it arranged. We don't have the time set yet that we can do it. So it will happen sometime during this week where I will be interviewing Dana on a YouTube live, and I'll ask for questions from the fans, and we'll pick a few of the questions to come out and do that. But yeah, it's going to be a fun week, and I'm looking forward to it. And if you go to my channel now too, I already have interviews with Ilia Topuria, the featherweight champion, Max Holloway, the BMF champion, and Robert Whitaker already up there. And those guys are all competing on UFC 208.
308.
308.
I got you on that one. Yes. So how do you like the transition here to more video stuff? Then KevinIole.com is still your main.
I did 3 stories yesterday.
I know, but how do you like the video transfer here?
Well, I love the fights, right? And I love talking about the fights. And you and I talk about the fights off the air a lot. And I have that with a lot of my other friends and people I know. And I have been a fight fan all of my life. So to be able to talk about the fights and say, hey, I'm getting paid for this and this is work is pretty cool, right? Yeah. Just like doing this with you right now. There are some people who would say it's work. I say, hey, I'm chatting about something I love with my friend. What could be better than that, right? And so that's what I love to do. And, I have a face made for print, and I get that. And the funny thing is, I'm pretty good. Like I used to work at the Apple Store, and I used to teach classes, and I'm pretty good on technology. But I have never in my life had to do video or audio, right? And I never learned it. I never knew anything about it. So now all of a sudden I get all this stuff coming up, and it's like, what the hell am I doing? Right. Yeah, and that's where I'm kind of messed up. So, but I love it. And I should tell everybody, you're a big help to me. And when I do have Dana on, George will be in the back picking the questions and popping those up. So I appreciate everything that you do to help me.
Well, you're the man, Kev. You gave us an opportunity a little while ago, and we still, like I said, we're good friends now. And I even got out to Vegas, and I'll be out shortly again to come out to see you.
What about Coach Diz? When are we going to see Coach Diz?
I don't know. Coach Diz is all over the place. His job is very stressful. So, but he was here yesterday. But I couldn't be here. So I went somewhere and he was here and we couldn't. It's better when Coach Diz is in studio. Here,
what I want one day is I want a picture of me, you, Coach Diz, and Jersey Joe. That's what I want, a picture of the 4 of us arm in arm.
Well, listen. When's the next East Coast thing? I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't be West
309.
Will you be out there at all?
I haven't made up my mind if I'm going to travel to that. Since KevinIole.com picks up the bill for this now, it's the problem I'm having with that is if I go to New York, like what I've been trying to do to save money is when I travel for these fights, I've been trying to travel right the day before the fight, right? And then get in. But flying from the one coast to the other, it's, 5.5 hours, and it takes time, and I'm losing 3 hours going that direction. So I had the Tyson Jake Paul fight on the day before John Jones, Stipe Miocic, right? So if I fly back for that, then I have to be there in my hotel room on Friday night to watch the Tyson Jake Paul fight. So there's a lot of stuff, factors complicating that one. So I don't know yet.
Are you covering Tyson Paul or no?
Yes.
Like, you're gonna be in the building?
No, I did not apply. So I have never gotten great cooperation from Jake Paul's people, right? No, really? they actually, compared to the PFL, Jake Paul's people, and I shouldn't even say compared to the PFL, they promote really well. They work at it and they try. And I'm grateful to them because they do provide information, right? but I kind of looked at it, and I know people on the inside, and they said it's going to, there's going to be very little access to the fighters and things going on. And I just thought, okay, what is the point of me flying there, not getting access, right? Because I'm no longer at this major site. I'm at a small site, and, not getting access, spending all that money, and then going the next day flying to New York. So I decided I'm not going to go to Dallas. I'm still hoping to do an interview with Mike and get that done and have that on my YouTube channel. And of course, I'll write about that. But I'm going to write about, Mike Tyson is one of the people you can write about virtually every day, and people are going to read and they're going to talk about it. And I'm going to have a lot of stuff about Mike Tyson between now and the day that he fights.
Well, as always, Kevin, it's good to hear from you and good to see you. Go to KevinIole.com and go to Kevin Iole's YouTube channel if you want to be up to date with all the latest in combat sports. Kevin, as always, good to see you, and I will talk to you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, my man. Take care.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast